Hello and welcome to another JNP Trove class review. I am your host JonNario, and today I'll be talking about the Lunar Lancer. The Lunar Lancer is a physical-based character that uses a spear as a weapon of choice, so its focus is close-range combat. It has a bonus 30% to its base physical damage, and it also has a 5 more movement speed without any gears or gems or dragons. And when you level up, you get 1 more attack speed, and at levels 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, and 18 you get 1 more to your movement speed stat. And at level 20 you get 2 more movement speed and 10 more attack speed. And at level 30 you get a bonus 25% to your critical damage and 2 more attack speed. So this class is the fastest unbuffed class in the game. This class also has a good dodge, so this character has a good speed momentum. The Lunar Lancer is one of the best speed farming class in the game. It's one of the most important class to have it unlocked as well. Here in this video I will tell you why is this important to get this class unlocked. Now let's talk about the combat abilities and passive as well. This time I'll talk about all the abilities and the basic before the passive, since the passive does change every ability on the Lunar Lancer. But first, the basic attack. The Lunar Lancer's basic attack has a 1x damage multiplier, which is very low, and it is affected by attack speed, meaning using attack speed gear should be good for the class, right? No, I do not recommend using attack speed gear on the class, and I will tell you why later on. It has a range of 4 blocks, which is average for a close range character. It also has an above average attacks per second. It attacks at 1.75 times a second, meaning it attacks pretty fast. And it attacks in a straight pattern, but it does hit multiple enemies, meaning it has average crowd control. Overall, this basic attack is bad. The damage is very low, it has average range, it's pretty fast, but it attacks in a straight pattern. I would not recommend getting attack speed on this class, since this basic does have one of the lowest, if not the lowest DPS in the game from basic. Try finding other stats that is in attack speed, since you won't be using this basic to kill anyways. Now let's talk about the Lunar Lancer's ability and ult before explaining the passive. Starting with the first ability, Grappling Spear, which reads, throws a spear and then using it again to grapple to it. Each use deals light area damage. There's so much to this ability that I don't know if I will be able to cover all of it, but here we go. This ability has 3 modes, throw, grapple, and teleport. Let's start with throw. It's as simple as that. You throw the spear in an arc, and when it lands, the spear stays in the ground, indicating the place that you want to grapple. When you throw a spear, it can damage an enemy, but it doesn't go through them, so an enemy can get in the way of the spear's trajectory. This does a 1x damage to an enemy that it hits, and you can throw the spear as far as you want, but it has a limit of 31 blocks. After 31 blocks, when the spear hits the ground, it disappears instead of staying in the ground. If it does stay in the ground, it will stay there for 5 seconds, so you have 5 seconds to grapple into the spear, and if it does disappear, then it has a 1.5 second cooldown before you can throw the spear again. Now let's go into grapple. Again, very simple. When the spear hits the ground and it stays, you have the option to grapple to the spear. It has the same range of 31 blocks, and when you grapple the spear, you do a light AoE damage that does 1x damage as well. Keep in mind, if you damage an enemy with the grapple, then the spear will disappear and you will not grapple into the spear. Also, one thing to note, if the spear is behind a wall or something that gets in the way, you will get caught mid-travel and you will stop completely, so keep that in mind. And now, the teleport. I got nothing as far as the teleport. I tried different ways to get this to work, but it doesn't work. So forget about the teleport, since it's something exclusive to the Lunacy mode, aka the passive. But I will give you a brief explanation to the teleport. This is pretty much the grapple, but in Lunacy mode. The spear should have been in the ground before Lunacy mode triggers, but when it tested, it only did the grapple as far as my testing, so this doesn't work. Well, anyways, that's it. Overall, I want to give this ability a bad rating, just because of the trouble it took me to explain this. But I will say that it is an average ability. The damage is pathetic and it takes quite a bit to get it work, but it does have a really good range, and this will help a lot of beginner players since you can get really high without using any jumps. I would recommend to use this ability at the beginning of the game. As far as endgame players are concerned, just ignore this ability since the base movement speed that you have is more than enough. Now, let's continue with the simpler abilities. The second ability which you get at level 3 is Crescent Combo, which reads, swing your spear in a wide arc and charge it for a second hit. The second hit deals heavy damage and knocks the target towards the moon. Straightforward ability, so let's get to it. This ability does a 2-hit combo, so after the first hit it will take 1 second to do the second hit, which is bad since this basically lowers the DPS greatly. It has a 4 times damage multiplier each hit, so it has a total of 8 times damage, which is very high. It has a range of 4 blocks, which again is average for a close range ability. This ability attacks in a horizontal pattern, meaning it has really good crowd control. The second hit of this ability stuns enemies for 1 second, which is good since it helps the slow nature of this ability, and that's it. Overall, this ability is average. The damage is high, it has average range, good crowd control, and it stuns. But it's very slow and it will feel very clunky. Even though I rate it as an average ability, it's still the Lunar Lancer's main attack. So use this ability because it does high damage even though it's slow. The ultimate ability which you get at level 5 is called Blessing of the Moon, and the description reads, summons a spear from the heaven that increases stability, heals, and adds movement speed to on all allies. It also damages enemies caught in the area. So basically it summons a giant spear into the ground. This ability lands 4 blocks in front of the character and you can hold the ability down in case you want to aim this ability. Okay, first I'll start with the damage and then the buff that you get. It does a 5 times multiplier when the spear hits the ground, which is average for a regular ability. After the spear hits the ground, it will stay there for 10 seconds, dealing 0.25 times damage to all enemies in the area. It ticks twice a second, so it does a 0.5 times damage a second for 10 seconds, and this can crit, so it's alright for an extra damage ability. This ability has an 8 block damage radius, so it has really good crowd control. Now let's talk about the buff that you get while you're inside of the area of the spear. You and other players will get a plus 1000 to your stability, plus 100% to your health regeneration, and plus 20 movement speed if you're inside the spear radius, which is not bad but not amazing since it is only inside the 8 block radius, and that's it. Overall, this ultimate ability is average. This ult feels more like a regular ability rather than an ultimate ability. The damage is average, it has good AoE, it gives nice buffs, but it's an ult, so it has long cooldown. Still, I would recommend you to use this ability to kill bosses, since the spear takes roughly 0.5 seconds to land, and you can do a crescent combo to do incredible burst damage. Like I said, this ultimate ability lasts for 10 seconds and it has a 40-second cooldown. Now, let's talk about the passive on this class. Why it took me so long to explain this passive? I'll tell you why. The passive ability is called Lunacy, and the description reads, chance to get moon power on hit, gather enough to become infused with the power of the moon. When you transform, you will have increased movement speed, 50% reduced damage, and 50% more damage. The description is self-explanatory thankfully because there's a lot to this passive. First of all, when you hit an enemy, it will spawn 3 moons around your character. The moons have 3 stages before becoming a full moon, thus triggering lunacy mode. So the more you hit, the higher the chances of this ability to proc. First, let's start with the buff that you get and then the changes that it does to every ability. When you transform, you get a 50% bonus to your damage, meaning both physical and magic damage. A minus 50% to incoming damage, so you will become more tanky. You will get plus 300% to your health regeneration, plus 30 to your movement speed, and plus 100 to your stability. So you will get a lot of stats from transforming into lunacy mode. Now for the changes on the abilities. First, the grappling sphere. You should have gotten the teleport here, but like I said before, this does not work. Also, while in lunacy mode, you cannot grapple after you throw the spear in lunacy, but if you throw the spear before going into lunacy, you can grapple into that spear. And the spear that you throw is twice as big, so it gains more crowd control. Second, the crescent combo. Pretty much everything stays the same, except the second hit will make enemy hop for 1 block, and it will stun them for 2 seconds instead of 1. And third, the ultimate ability. If you use the ultimate ability while you're in lunacy mode, after the spear lands, it will keep spawning small meteorites around the area, dealing roughly 0.66 times damage each meteorite, and it can crit, and it has a 3x3 damage radius, and each meteorite will destroy blocks on contact, so be careful when you throw this ability. And that is all on this passive. Overall, it's obviously good. Seriously, this is a great passive. The amount of buff that you get is incredible, and it does change the ability, but not in a bad way, but for the most part it remains as effective as if you were in lunacy. There's no recommendations for this ability since it does trigger at random. I do not know the chances of this ability to proc, but it does proc quite often, so it's not a rare ability to spawn. Honestly, this will help more than you think. And that's all the abilities. Now, let's talk about the class gem ability. The Lunar Lancer's class gem ability is called Shadow Lancer, and the description reads, Lunacy also spawns a dark version of you that attacks enemies. This is an amplification on the amazing passive ability, but there isn't a lot to this class gem. So anyways, when Lunacy triggers, you will spawn a companion that attacks enemies. This companion has a 2.5 times damage multiplier, which is good for an extra damage ability since it can do critical hits. The companion targets at random, which is pretty bad, but it's whatever. This companion lasts for 25 seconds, but unfortunately the enemies can't do damage, meaning this companion can die before it hits 25 seconds. And that's it. Overall, this class gem is average. It's an okay class gem, but it doesn't change the way you play with this class. It just adds some extra damage to the passive ability, which is good, don't get me wrong, but remember that this is a class gem ability, so that's why I rate it as average. Getting this class gem is optional since it won't change how you play, but it has a nice bonus, so get it if you have a lot of extra class gem keys. Anyways, that's the class gem. Now, let's talk about the reason I say this class is very important to have it unlocked, the subclass. But as always, click on the timer on screen or the link in the description if you don't want to hear the explanations and tiers and such. But for those who want to stay, here are the subclass explanations and their tiers. Enjoy, and I'll see you in a bit. Before I talk about the subclass, I'll tell you how the subclass works first. There's one character level and one power rank. Levels 1 through 9 gives you the starting tier. At level 10 you get the second tier, then it's on a 5 level interval to keep increasing the subclass tier, capping at tier 6 at level 30. And power ranks tier 1 is at 1 power rank, and at 5000 power rank is the second tier. Then it's on a 5000 power rank interval, capping also at tier 6 at 25,000 power rank. Also, you get a bonus power rank when equipping a subclass. Levels 1 through 9 you get 15 bonus power rank. At level 10 you get 15 more power rank. Then it's every 5 levels you get 15 bonus power rank until you hit level 30, which gives you a total of 90 power rank. So when you're equipping a different character's subclass, this power rank doesn't count towards the tier list. That's why you might see the power rank on a character lower than usual when equipping a subclass. Welcome back, and here's the subclass. The Lunar Lancer subclass, sorta crazy, gives other classes the ability to trigger Lunacy mode, and it gives physical damage based on your Lunar Lancer's level. Tier 1 on character level, it gives 10 base to your physical damage. Tier 2 is 60, Tier 3 is 160, Tier 4 is 300, Tier 5 is 500, and Tier 6 is 750 base physical damage. And the subclass on power rank is the Lunacy mode buff. When you do damage, you have a chance of triggering Lunacy mode. When you are in Lunacy, you get plus 10% damage, meaning both physical and magic, 15 more movement speed, minus 10% to incoming damage, and you will also get plus 100 attack speed, which is ridiculous. The power rank tiers only increases the chances of this ability to proc. Tier 1 has a 20% chance of triggering Lunacy mode. Tier 2, 21%, Tier 3, 22%, Tier 4, 23%, Tier 5, 24%, and Tier 6 is a 25% chance of transforming into Lunacy mode. So yeah, powering up the Lunar Lancer for more damage, more attack speed is not a thing. It's a popular misconception, so you will get the same benefit from Tier 1 or Tier 6. So in other words, don't power up the Lunar Lancer thinking that you will get more power out of it. Anyways, overall, this is probably the best subclass in the game. The benefits that you get are just ridiculous. This will make any character that relies on attack speed a monster. This is the preferred subclass for Shadow Towers and speedrun, and I will strongly recommend having a Lunar Lancer unlocked for this subclass alone. That's the Lunar Lancer. In my opinion, it's an average class all around. I would say it's slightly above average just because this class is very good for farming dungeons, but it's one of, if not the worst Shadow Tower class. All the Lunar Lancer abilities are very close and slow. For Shadow Towers, you need either a lot of range, pulling properties or being able to permastun. Still, I would recommend this class for any players that wants a good class for farming dungeons, due to having a higher than average physical damage and pretty high multiplier from crescent combo, and not to mention the ridiculously high base movement speed. My gear recommendation is to get critical damage and movement speed. Since the basic attack is so bad, just focus on the strengths of this class, which is the higher damage and movement speed. As far as the ring, I will recommend energy regen, since you will be using crescent combo for the most part and energy regen ring should be more than enough. Anyways, thank you for watching, let me know what you think on the class in the comments below, and tell me which class I should do in the next episode. The ones who's winning is the ever so popular Candy Barbarian. So if you want to see the Candy Barbarian, let me know in the comments below, or if you want to see another class, also let me know in the comments below. Make sure to leave a like if you want to help the channel grow and subscribe for more. Once again, thank you for watching and I hope to see you next time. Take care and keep on hunting. And I'm sorry this took too long to come out. See ya.